A billionaire's obsession with purity turned into a night of horror when a $10 million bride revealed a truth that made the Sheikh choose murder over humiliation. Sheikh Khalid Al Farouk was a man whose power stretched beyond borders. At 52, he had built an empire from oil and real estate, commanding luxury and loyalty in equal measure. Yet behind the gleaming marble halls of his Dubai palace, Khalid nursed a strange obsession that had grown stronger with age. His previous marriages, lavish, strategic, and short-lived, had brought him status but no satisfaction. He wanted something pure, untouched, and entirely his. To him, purity was not a virtue but a possession, a symbol of dominance and control. Those around him whispered about his eccentric desires, but none dared confront him. His search for perfection became a ritual. Every few months, he summoned private investigators and matchmakers who specialized in discreet arrangements with women from poorer countries. He paid generously but demanded secrecy. His assistants learned never to question his motives. For Khalid, it wasn't about love or companionship. It was about reclaiming something he believed the modern world had stolen from him: innocence, obedience, and the illusion of moral superiority. Late one evening, while sitting alone on his terrace overlooking the Persian Gulf, Khalid received a file from one of his international contacts. Inside was a photograph of a young woman from the Philippines, barely 19, with soft brown eyes and a shy smile. The report described her as humble, religious, and untainted. The words ignited something dark inside him. He read every line with an intensity that bordered on obsession. She wasn't just another candidate. She was the embodiment of the fantasy he'd been chasing for years. He closed the file, his reflection glimmering in the glass table before him, and whispered a vow only he could hear. The search was over. He had finally found the girl he would make his bride, at any cost. In the chaotic streets of Manila, Selena Ramos moved like a shadow, elegant, untouchable, and dangerous. Once a model with fading fame, she had learned how to turn desperation into profit. Her underground matchmaking business catered exclusively to wealthy foreign men who desired traditional brides. She called it a marriage agency, but everyone who dealt with her knew it was something far darker. Selena had connections in high places and an uncanny ability to make anything appear legitimate. Documents, passports, medical records, everything could be arranged for the right price. When Sheikh Khalid's assistant contacted her through an encrypted channel, Selena sensed opportunity. The request was specific: a young Filipina, untouched, beautiful, and submissive. Money was no issue. Khalid was offering $10 million for absolute discretion. Selena immediately began her search, flipping through profiles of girls from remote villages and poor families. Her eyes stopped at a photo of a 19-year-old waitress named Mariel Santos. She worked long shifts at a seaside cafe, supporting her parents and two younger siblings. Her references described her as polite, shy, and deeply religious, everything Khalid demanded. Selena arranged a meeting under the pretense of a scholarship interview. She studied Mariel carefully, noting her soft features and the innocence in her voice. Within an hour, she knew she had found the one. She visited Mariel's family days later, dressed in designer clothes and carrying promises of wealth beyond imagination. She spoke of royal families, luxury, and a secure future. When Khalid's offer reached Mariel's parents, their hesitation melted under the weight of desperation. $10 million was enough to change generations. They signed the papers without reading the fine print. Selena smiled coldly as she left their home, knowing she had just sold another soul to a man who collected innocence like trophies. Sheikh Khalid arrived in the Philippines under an alias, traveling aboard his private jet, surrounded by a security team that followed his every command. He had chosen secrecy over spectacle, insisting the ceremony remain hidden from public eyes. A private island off Palawan was rented for the event, guarded by local police paid to stay silent. The staff was ordered to surrender their phones, and anyone who dared to ask questions was immediately replaced. The wedding, he claimed, was not a union of love but a sacred contract, one that would mark the beginning of his new legacy. Mariel Santos was transported to the island 2 days before the ceremony. She was overwhelmed by the sudden change, the lavish suite, the sparkling gowns, the endless sea surrounding her like a golden prison. Makeup artists and stylists fluttered around her, transforming the humble waitress into what the sheik wanted, a bride fit for royalty. Her parents had been told she would live in Dubai, where she would be cared for like a queen. Mariel believed their sacrifice was for a better life, unaware of the darkness waiting behind her groom's smile. The wedding took place at sunset under an arch of white orchids and crystal lights. Khalid wore traditional Emirati attire embroidered with gold, his face calm, almost unreadable. He barely looked at the guests, mostly his men and a few of Selena's trusted associates. When Mariel walked toward him, her innocence seemed to fill the air, fragile yet blinding. Khalid took her hand, his grip firm, claiming her before the vows even ended. As the night grew deeper, the celebrations faded into silence. In the distance, waves crashed against the island's edge, while inside the grand villa, Khalid was already preparing for the one thing he had come for, the final test of his bride's purity. The night of the wedding was thick with tension disguised as luxury. The golden suite prepared for the couple glittered with opulence, silk sheets imported from France, rose petals scattered across the floor, and candles flickering against marble walls. Servants whispered prayers as they closed the doors behind them, leaving Mariel and the sheik alone for the first time. Khalid watched her closely, his expression unreadable, his eyes cold with expectation. Mariel tried to calm her trembling hands, remembering Selena's instructions to obey, to remain gentle, to endure whatever came. She had no idea that her husband's fascination with her innocence was not romantic, but obsessive and cruel. Hours passed, the night air heavy with silence. Then, somewhere deep within the palace, a piercing scream echoed. The guards stationed outside exchanged uneasy glances but did not dare move. By morning, the suite was sealed. Khalid emerged pale and furious, ordering his men to remove all staff who had worked that night. He told the manager that his wife had fallen ill from exhaustion and would be flown to Dubai immediately for treatment. None were allowed to question him. Behind the locked door, Mariel's body lay twisted beneath the silk sheets, her once perfect wedding dress torn, her jewelry missing. The doctor who examined her later would be paid a fortune to declare her death an accident. Khalid left the island before sunrise, his jet cutting through the pale dawn sky, as if fleeing from the truth. The resort staff cleaned the suite under strict orders, scrubbing every trace of blood, every whisper of struggle. By noon, the story had been rewritten. The sheik's bride had not died. She had simply gone home with her husband. But the sea outside seemed to remember, carrying her final cry into endless waves. Selena Ramos received the message just after dawn. It was brief and chilling. The deal is done. Forget everything. She understood what those words meant. Sheikh Khalid had taken what he wanted, and now her involvement had to vanish. Within hours, her offshore account received the remaining balance, $10 million, wired in neat installments. Selena deleted every file, burned photographs, and instructed her employees to destroy Mariel's application forms. In her world, loyalty was measured by silence, and silence was now worth millions. Meanwhile, Mariel's parents were informed that their daughter had traveled to Dubai for a private honeymoon and would remain abroad for several months. They were also told, through a fabricated legal letter, that for security reasons, she could not communicate directly. Enclosed was a check for $10 million, enough to silence their doubts. The family, overwhelmed by guilt and relief, built a new home and funded local charities in their daughter's name, believing she had become a princess in another land. On the island, the truth was buried deeper than the body itself. Khalid's men bribed the local coroner to issue a death certificate listing cardiac arrest as the cause of death. Mariel's remains were quietly interred in a remote village cemetery under a false name. No official records linked her to the sheik. Within a week, the staff who had served during the wedding were either dismissed or reassigned to other resorts. The entire island seemed to erase her existence overnight. Selena flew to Singapore soon after, determined never to return. Yet something about this transaction lingered with her. Mariel's trembling hands, her uncertain smile, the way she had whispered a prayer before leaving. For the first time, Selena felt a trace of unease. She had sold many brides before, but this one felt different. Alona, a quiet maid who had worked at the resort for 3 years, could not erase the memory of that night. She had been stationed near the bridal suite, carrying linens when she heard the scream. Later, she saw two of the Sheikh's guards carrying a large, linen-wrapped bundle toward the private dock. It was heavy, one man grunting as they loaded it into a small boat. When she tried to ask what was happening, one guard glared at her and pressed a finger to his lips. Fear rooted her to the spot. By sunrise, the Sheikh was gone, and the suite was sealed for cleaning. Days turned into months, but Alona's unease only grew stronger. Rumors swirled among staff. Some said the bride had died. Others believed she had been taken away. Yet no one dared speak publicly. The resort's owner had been paid handsomely for his silence. Alona tried to move on, but nightmares plagued her. Every time she changed a bed or polished a mirror, she saw flashes of that linen-wrapped shape, the faint smear of blood she'd noticed near the dock, the smell of salt and iron mixed together. One evening, nearly 6 months later, she stumbled upon a news clip about a missing Filipina bride rumored to have married a Middle Eastern tycoon. The photo of Mariel's smiling face shattered her. She recognized her instantly. The guilt became unbearable. Alona reached out to a local journalist known for exposing corruption. Trembling, she recounted everything she had witnessed that night. The scream, the guards, the bundle, the cover-up. The journalist promised to keep her identity hidden. For the first time, someone listened. Alona didn't know it yet, but her confession would ignite an investigation powerful enough to pierce through the walls of wealth and secrecy. Detective Marco Della Vega had seen his share of grim cases, but Alona's testimony disturbed him more than most. The details were too precise, too consistent to ignore. As a veteran investigator known for dismantling trafficking networks, he recognized the signs of exploitation hidden beneath the guise of a high-profile marriage. Working quietly to avoid alerting anyone in power, Marco began tracing the connections between Selena Ramos's agency and Khalid Al-Farouk's known business interests. What he found was a web of transactions linking powerful men to missing young women from across Southeast Asia. Each file followed the same pattern: contracts signed, families paid, brides vanishing within months. Marco's instincts told him this was bigger than one murder. He visited Selena's old office, now shuttered and empty, and discovered a storage unit registered in her assistant's name. Inside were hidden ledgers, encrypted drives, and hundreds of photos, smiling brides paired with faceless men. Among them was Mariel's profile, stamped with a red mark that read confirmed. The discovery chilled him. He realized that what had been sold as a marriage was in fact a sophisticated trafficking operation masked by wealth and diplomacy. When Marco reached out to the embassy to request Khalid's travel and identity records, he was met with resistance. Dubai officials denied involvement and warned him against damaging international relations. His superior officers began to pressure him to close the case. Anonymous calls followed, advising him to forget the girl. But Marco refused. He copied the evidence onto a secure drive and reached out to foreign journalists for help. Though he knew he was being watched, he was determined to expose the truth. He didn't yet understand the danger he was inviting, but he had already crossed the point of no return. The investigation reached a dead end when politics stepped in. Marco's reports, once encouraged by his superiors, were suddenly classified. Requests for access to Khalid Al-Farouk's travel history were rejected by both the Philippine and Dubai authorities. Officials cited insufficient evidence and jurisdictional complications. Behind the scenes, powerful figures intervened, eager to protect diplomatic and financial ties with the Sheikh's empire. Witnesses began to vanish. The resort manager resigned overnight, and the coroner who had falsified Mariel's death certificate fled the country. Every trail Marco followed seemed to dissolve into silence and fear. Still, he persisted. Through leaked flight records, he discovered Khalid's private jet had left Palawan just hours after Mariel's death, heading directly to Dubai. A medical examiner from the island later contacted Marco anonymously, confessing that he had been paid a large sum to declare cardiac arrest as the cause of death. He also admitted that the body had bruising inconsistent with natural causes. The truth was finally within reach, but Marco's pursuit came at a cost. He began receiving threats. Anonymous letters slipped under his door, strange cars parked outside his home, and one night, his apartment was broken into, his files destroyed. Under growing pressure, the police department reassigned him to a minor theft case, effectively halting his investigation. His colleagues stopped speaking to him, fearful of losing their jobs. It was clear someone powerful wanted the story buried forever. Yet Marco refused to let go. He backed up every file, every testimony, and sent copies to a network of international journalists. What began as a case of one murdered bride had now become evidence of a global exploitation ring. Though his government silenced him, he knew the truth could not stay hidden forever. Something was about to break loose. Nearly a year after the case was buried, an unexpected discovery reignited the fire Marco had started. A young technician working at the Palawan resort found an old, water-damaged surveillance drive during renovations. Most of the footage was corrupted, but one recovered file was intact. It showed a dimly lit hallway outside the bridal suite, time-stamped the night of the wedding. In the clip, Sheikh Khalid could be seen entering the room with Mariel. 40 minutes later, he stormed out alone, his white robe stained and his hands trembling. The camera caught him shouting at his guards before ordering them to bring a blanket. Moments after, two men carried something heavy down the corridor, wrapped in linen. There was no sound, but the images told everything. The technician, terrified of being tracked, copied the video and uploaded it anonymously to the dark web. Within hours, it spread across hidden forums, reaching journalists, activists, and eventually, the global media. Major networks blurred the footage but confirmed the Sheikh's identity. The story exploded. #Justice for Mariel trended across social media, and Khalid's empire began to crumble. His business partners withdrew support, and several of his assets were frozen under public pressure. But before any legal action could reach him, Khalid disappeared from Dubai. Private investigators traced him to a fortified estate in Morocco, guarded by mercenaries. He issued a brief statement through his lawyers denying everything, calling the footage fake and politically motivated. Yet those who knew him whispered that he was losing control, consumed by paranoia. The once proud Sheikh rarely left his home, haunted by guilt or fear, or perhaps both. In the quiet of his palatial villa, he began receiving anonymous letters containing a single phrase written in red ink: "She knows." No one knew who she was until it was too late. 2 years after the video leak, Sheikh Khalid Al Farouk was found dead inside his Moroccan villa. His staff discovered him early one morning, lying motionless on his bed, his face pale and lips blue. The official report listed heart failure as the cause of death, but whispers among the servants told a different story. On the night before his death, Khalid had dined alone in his private quarters. He refused to be disturbed, as he often did. When his body was found, an untouched glass of wine sat on the nightstand, and beside it, a small silver rosary, identical to the one Mariel wore on her wedding day. No one could explain how it got there. The Moroccan police launched a brief investigation but closed it within days. There was no sign of forced entry, no fingerprints, and no evidence of poisoning, at least none that could be proven. The guards insisted that no one had entered or left the villa that night. Yet those closest to Khalid claimed he had been tormented in his final weeks. He spoke to shadows, heard whispers in the corridors, and accused his servants of hiding the girl from him. His paranoia grew until he dismissed most of his staff, trusting no one. When news of his death broke, the world reacted with eerie silence. In the Philippines, Mariel's parents received an anonymous package containing a flash drive. Inside was a single video clip, the Sheikh asleep, moments before his final breath, and a woman's faint humming in the background, a melody Mariel used to sing in church. Whether it was evidence, vengeance, or something supernatural, no one ever knew. The Sheikh who once believed money could buy innocence met an end as mysterious as his crimes, proving that no fortune can silence the echoes of the dead.